You are listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and our guest for this episode has been a bucket list guest for me since day one of starting the Mountainside. It was an honor and privilege to have Donnie Vincent in studio. This was a great conversation. I hold Donnie in the hunting community in the highest regard of how he portrays hunting through his filmmaking, his studies in wildlife biology, and much more. Donnie is an amazing human doing amazing things, and I enjoyed spending a little bit of time with him today. Enjoy the conversation.
We've just been embraced by the community, because I'm a nobody. You know what I mean?
Well, I honestly, I think that's who we are. And we have different talents and stuff, but I think that's really what it boils down to. You know, you hear people say, you know, oh, that guy, he just puts his pants on one leg at a time. Well, everyone does that, you know,
right.
And everyone has breaks and everyone gets, you know, shortcuts, and yeah.
Welcome to Colorado. Thank you for joining us and making the drive. You drove across half the damn state today, pretty much, I think, right?
Yeah, and the landscape changed. It's really funny how much the landscape can change.
It's pretty wild. You know what blows me away, and you being a biologist, you probably really understand it, but just the amount of species that change from the plains to mountain goats, right? Because if you drive another 45 minutes from where you're staying, you know, you're here. And if you drive another 45 minutes, you're at 14,000 feet.
Yeah.
Well, in the summer, you can drive that far.
Well, it was crazy. I think I was texting you earlier that on this trip, I have my 7-year-old with me, and the Jeep that we rented kept giving us, you know, yesterday it gave us wind alerts because where we were, it was blowing 65 yesterday.
Wow.
Something like that. It was really cool. We saw some really interesting weather phenomenon yesterday when we were driving, but which I'll tell you in a second.
Colorado's great for it.
Oh, it was insane. Essentially, we were driving through tornadoes yesterday, but they weren't tornadoes. They're just dust devils, but the size of skyscrapers. Yeah. Massive dust devils. It was really cool to see. So it was really windy yesterday, and the Jeep was giving us wind warnings. And then today it was giving us avalanche warnings, and I was messing with him a little bit because where we were is yellow grass and rattlesnakes as far as the eye can see. I mean, it's cattle and yellow grass and sagebrush and tumbleweed for as far as you can see. And I was telling him, I was like, man alive, avalanches today, that's not going to be good. And I'm looking around, and I see him looking around, and he's like, where is the snow going to come from?
Or a mountain, right?
Yeah,
Is like, you might catch a glimpse of it from that far. Like,
he kept twisting around back and forth, like, where are the avalanches going to come from? Yeah. So it's good. I appreciate the offer, and I enjoy doing podcasts with people. I enjoy talking and telling my story and just telling stories in general, and just meeting new people. And it's funny, I enjoy doing podcasts with people the first time, but it seemed I really enjoy doing podcasts with people, you know, the second time, third time, things like that.
Wow, that's what we figured out too, or I figured out here is, you know, when I started this thing, I really wanted it to be a community. Mm-hmm. So I try to only vet my guests, and like, you were one of the first people that came to mind when I first started this thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we're a couple years in now. So, like, this is a bucket list podcast for me.
Right on.
And I think the reason why, or I know the reason why, is I really love your approach to the outdoors and portraying its beauty in the cinematography, your approach to showing how you portray hunting, and your values to hunting as well, I think are amazing. So
I appreciate
cheers
that.
To that.
Thank you.
But yeah, since we've started the podcast, you know, we've had multiple guests come back in, and we've built this little community where we have recurring guests.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. Like, the first one is just like kind of getting to know each other. So it turns into kind of the normal podcast of like, so where'd you grow up? And it's almost a bit like an interview, but then you do that second or third one, and it's like you're lifelong friends, right?
Yeah.
Because you build this common bond in here. And, you know, I think that podcasting for me, and I beat this up all the time, but it's the genuine way to sit down and have a conversation these days, unless you're in the middle of the backcountry. Like, I don't have these conversations other than with my hunting buddies or people that I've had a podcast with, because there's so many interruptions and distractions and just, it's the modern world that we're living in.
Yeah.
Right?
Phones. Right. And and I think I said this to you before we started, and I believe this. I think podcasts should be illegal unless they're face to face. And I do most of mine by, Zoom or whatever is popular now, Google, whatever, but they're terrible. It's tough. You see the person through the screen, and I really wonder, are they wearing pants? And, is this one of those things where they threw on their Hoyt t-shirt or their PSE archery t-shirt to interview me, and they have, an antler behind them, and it's a wood wall, and you have your studio and stuff, but this is just so much better.
It's cool to walk in here and have a feeling there's a connection. Like, the problem with us, especially doing virtual, is we're up here in the mountains. So like, we have the best internet that money can buy up here, but it's not that fucking good, honestly, Yeah. So it's like, there's a little bit of a lag in connection. We have some awesome we use like the most professional platform you can, but still it's just like, there's something missing, man.
Yeah.
There's something missing in it. Although I will say this, I love watching Jack Carr's Danger Close. And I caught you on that. Mm-hmm. Was that a couple months ago that was out? Or
yeah, it was a couple months ago.
And he does a really good job. And the guys at Ironclad, I think, do an amazing job. They've worked with some friends of mine and stuff. But so I think that they're kind of doing it right. And that was a great podcast, man. I mean, or at least it was edited to be great,
I mean, and they can be good, and I've had some really good ones. I've had some impromptu ones that are, quite honestly, just with a phone, and that have where the conversations have went really, smoothly, because the person asked me questions that it just elicited where my mind was going to go to a particular place, and found a story that I wanted to tell or hadn't told, and did so. And I mean, I say that it should be illegal unless we're in person, but the truth is also that if you had, if I had a conversation with Rogan, or if I had a conversation with Tom Brokaw or someone like that in a unprofessional setting, it's probably still be a really good conversation. It's just that, when you have microphones like this and headsets, when Rogan reached out to me to do his.
Had you been on a podcast prior to that, or?
Oh yeah, I had done a bunch of, smaller ones, I guess. And then
that was a while ago. That was before, 2018.
Yeah. Right before all the mess and everything. Yeah. Yeah. And he just reached out to me. I woke up one morning and he got my cell, I think, from someone, and he just texted me and said, "Hey, this is Joe. This is my cell phone. Next time you're in LA, I'd love to have you on the podcast." And I texted him back and said, "Well, I'm never in LA, so we should schedule it if you want to actually do the podcast, because me strolling into LA is not going to happen." Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't go there unless I absolutely have to.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to. I'm honored. I used to have an agent, which was, I thought things were going to kind of, I used to have with William Morris Endeavor.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, I had a really cool experience there. I was doing a bunch of stuff with Discovery and things like that, and so those guys would fly me into LA to come to meetings with them, and they'd pitch different TV shows and stuff for me to do. And I essentially, over the course of probably 2 years, turned every TV show down that they offered me. And then they just stopped. They said, "Okay, if you're going to keep turning them down, then we have to, kind of go and go catch a fish we can fry."
Well, I love that you did, because for me, it's hard to swallow. I grew up bow hunting. I grew up in a bow hunting family that very much has, I guess, a traditional approach to it, and some of them, and not traditional in like the archery sense, right? And even though some of them do traditionally hunt, but more about the ethics and using as much of the animal as you can, and the packing out, and just making sure the meat stays super clean, like, just really caring for something once it happens, and also being immersed in the experience. Like, they really taught me the experience of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's why I connected with you so well, or what you do. So I'm really glad that you didn't go down that road, because I hate to say it, when I turn on the Sportsman channel, it just disgusts me. I cannot watch it. And I'm not knocking anybody that's in that space, but it's just, I can't watch the shows. They feel foreign or fake or not. Some of these people don't have the same beliefs that I do, which, brings me to my next point is, we're so divided between hunters and non-hunters, but also in the hunting community, there's
there's so much criticism that goes on, right?
Yeah.
And now here I am being one of those critics.
Well, it's
right?
hard. It's hard not to. In anything that you do, we talk about being togetherness and having unity, but in anything you do, there's going to be decisiveness, right? Just because you're a hunter and someone else is a hunter or allegedly a hunter doesn't mean that you need to back all of their ethics and their morals and how they kind of go about things. And even with the Outdoor Channel and Sportsman Channel, I mean, the stuff that WME wanted me to do was with History Channel and Discovery and that type of stuff. They wanted me to, find Bigfoot, and they wanted me to live in,
Really?
and they want me, like every year, and I'm not knocking it. I'm sure it'd be fun, but every year I get an email from Alone. Every year Alone wants me to go on and try to be a contestant. And so, and it's very flattering. And and one of these projects I actually, I almost did. Discovery, I think, or the History Channel wanted me to do. They wanted me to live for 6 months in a place in the Northwest Territories. I think it's called the Valley of the Headless Souls. It's been an area where there was, don't quote me on this, but there's something like 30 murders in this valley in real life. People decapitated.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they said, we want you to go and camp in this area for 6 months or 7 months. Would you do that? And I said, absolutely. And they said, legend has it, and I know the math doesn't add up, but they said legend has it that there was half man, half bear, half beast. So obviously be a third, but this is how they said it. That is decapitating all of these men. Will you go camp? And I said, absolutely. I said, well, can you guys talk to the province up there? Will I be able to kill caribou or Dall sheep to have meat? And they said, yes, we'll figure all that stuff out. And I said, that's fantastic. I'll definitely do it. And then they said, just occasionally you have to, once an episode, have an engagement and have a, some sort of encounter with this thing.
So like a staged encounter.
Yeah,
right?
so
Okay.
I'd have to hear a scream at night, or I'd have to hear, I'd have to find a track that didn't make sense, and I was like, yeah, I'm out. I was like, I'll go camp there and tell a spooky story every night around the fire and say, okay, I haven't seen anything yet, or, I found a dead moose today that was totally eviscerated, kind of looked like a grizzly bear did it, but, you never can tell. I'm willing to go that far, but I'm not willing to Blair Witch an entire TV show, you know, and if it was scripted, yeah, no problem. But if it's me representing me, so that being by the wayside, fast forward to what you were just saying with Sportsman's Channel and Outdoor Channel, it's very difficult I don't have a lot in common, seemingly. I don't have a lot in common, and it sounds like you don't either, with a lot of the people that do those shows, but also those networks put those hunters in a really difficult position. I've even met with them many, many times. They have asked me, hey, how do we get your work on Outdoor Channel? How do we get on Sportsman Channel? And they have aired. All of my films have aired on both channels a few times.
Have.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
They've kind of done like a Friday night movie night where they've played The Rivers Divide uninterrupted. No commercials. They've just played it in entirety, and then they'll play all the commercials and stuff afterwards. And the guy honestly from Outdoor Channel emailed me on Monday morning, and he said, he's like, I wish more Mondays were like this, because all of the emails that I received all from the entire weekend were like, please do more of this. Please find more content like this. He said it was essentially the first Monday he had ever showed up to work and had positive emails. But when I go in there to do this, when I went in there to meet with these guys, the higher ups basically looked me in the face and they said, we love your work. We wish you understood it. We wish you got it. You don't. We wish you did. And basically then one time I was in a meeting and the guy's like, we love your work, but he's like, you just don't get it. It's not about hunting and about cinematography and story and photos and wardrobe, if you will. He said it's about marketing dollars and commercial dollars, and Jim Shockey happened to be in there, and Jim's I don't know Jim personally. I hold Jim in very, very high regard in who he is and his ethics, and I mean the guy has pushed the envelope beyond belief, and he's very, very well spoken, and he's just a fantastic ambassador. I don't know much about him because we haven't spent any time and space together, but this guy pointed at Jim, and he's like, he gets it. Like he's pushing his economics, and whether Jim was part of that conversation or not, but that's where the kind of the pitfall would come to, where I think they put those guys in a difficult position. And then I think because of TV, because of social media, because of popularity, I think a lot of these people that end up on those shows aren't really hunters or don't really understand what hunting is and or what it could be to them, slowing everything down instead of speeding everything up, not just going to promote an outfitter, not going to kill a deer just to drop it off at the butcher to get back in your jacked up pickup and drive to the next hunt. It's breaking that animal down. It's going through all the guts and figuring out, oh, these are the kidneys. Okay, so this is what the kidneys look like in a whitetail deer. And then, oh, look, this kidney's malformed a little bit. Or look, hey, there's a laceration on this deer's liver. Or look, everything looks so perfect and in order, and you can see where my broadhead went in, and like truly doing almost an autopsy or a necropsy on this deer, and then figuring out, the mechanics of this animal and its evolutionary adaptations, and then you're kind of having the dried blood on your hands and reliving the morning with a friend, and just that whole kind of peaceful slowdown, right? That's what they're not afforded to experience in the 22 minutes of filming.
I couldn't agree more with you, and I think that's what really makes me connected to your films. It was amazing how I ran across you, honestly, for the first time, because I don't follow hunting and stuff. Like, it's always been in my background since I was a super young kid. My family's blue collar. They would get off of work and hunt. They weren't trying to have hunting shows or any of that, right?
Yeah,
and although some of them had some write-ups in some magazines and stuff like that, and are in Pope and Young, and some of these awesome achievements that they've had, they've been approached by Cabela's like, we'll give you X amount of dollars for this mule deer. Yeah. And the answer was absolutely not. Yeah. Like, this is mine. Yeah. Even if you build me a replica, I want this one, right? Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool that they've stuck to their roots. But one of the places that we've been going since I was a young boy was Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear with the Clums, right? And they've been family friends for a long time.
Yeah, they're amazing people.
I walked in there, I think, when I'd moved back to Colorado, and I walked in and they have this gigantic banner, and I can't remember what the company is, but you're on the banner, and it says
PSE.
It says Donnie Vincent at the bottom of it, and it's on the archery range. I don't know if you've been in there since then. Yeah. And Tom was giving me a lesson that I didn't ask for, but I was getting a lesson, right? I love it. I love it. And he's got me dialed in on shooting too, like the whole archery mechanics and that whole side of Tom is just great, and just salt of the earth, great human being. We've had him on the podcast. I can't wait to have him back. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, we walked in and I'm like, okay, well, if Tom thinks enough of Donnie to have him this gigantic banner taking up half the wall, I better check this guy out. So I think I went, and I think maybe it was Rivers Divide was the first. Is that the whitetail hunt? Yep. Okay. So yeah, I think that was the first one I saw, and then a lapse went by, and somehow you popped up in a YouTube feed or something, and it was Who We Are. Oh, is that the name of the? Yep. And I watched that, and that was hook, line, and sinker for me with you. Like,
oh, sure.
Because I had kind of forgot about, the Rivers Divide, and I love that film. I actually went back and watched it the other night when I figured out that you were coming in.
Yeah,
and,
right on.
Downloaded a couple others too that I hadn't seen. Like The Other Side was amazing.
Is the bear film. Mm-hmm.
Was that shown in theaters? Because it
was actually shown the premiere, and I need to do a better job of this because it was really fun. But the premiere was in Fort Collins, and it was.
Way. I wish I would have went to that, man.
There's a theater / not brewery, but maybe pub or beer pub in Fort Collins. It's a really cool space, but it was standing room only. It was.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh, I didn't even want to walk in the door. I got there and I was too nervous to even. I got there and ran into Kyle Nicolai, my director, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "It's it's packed beyond belief in there. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to go in. He's like, yeah, I don't know how you're going to do this, but
you need security at that point or something, right?
And so we went in there, but it was cool. Yeah. It was, and I need to do more theaters. Every time we played in a theater, it's been standing room only.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's so amazing. I would pay to go see your film twice, and I don't think I've done that since Happy Gilmore. So, and I was in high school.
Well, and that is an excellent film. Yeah.
But yeah, just your whole approach. I urge you, whether you're a hunter or not, if you're listening to this now, at least go watch Who We Are. It's like a 6-minute film, but just the cinematography in it is amazing. The aerial shots. I think one of the coolest things is the way that you do these like overhead shots. I don't know if they're from a drone or from a jib or something like your
both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, back then in the Who We Are, it's either a jib or me holding onto a guy's belt and hanging him over a cliff.
Really?
One of the two. That was our original drone was, okay, you hang over and I'll hold on to you and then we'll pull the whole works back.
Yeah. One of my favorite shots is how you start, and I'm a photographer, so
yeah, right on.
I can appreciate cinematography. Like one of my favorite films of all time is Francis Ford Coppola's Black Beauty.
Yeah.
Just because the cinematography in that is so cool, and the way that they slow it down, like where they show the side of the boat and the waves like hitting it, and you're like, wait a minute, what am I looking at here? Yeah. And then it takes you a minute to realize. And then that's like the opener for the film.
Like that frame, the amount of information that you're getting in that frame is
so
crazy.
Epic, right? And that's a simple shot. That's somebody holding a camera over the front end of the boat as it's going through water. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
And your entire films are like that. Like I love the way that you start Rivers Divide. It's you backing. There's like an overhead shot where you put a camera in the rafters and you back like, I think it was a Toyota pickup or something.
Tacoma.
I'm a Toyota fan. Grew up on those too. Still drive a Tundra to this day. But that backs in. It's you unloading your gear into this barn, getting set up for this deer hunt, and then you go through this whole 4-year period, right? In an hour and a half, or however long that film is.
Yeah, it's just under an hour,
Yeah, and then the very last shot is that pickup pulling in with Steve in the back.
Isn't that gnarly?
Yeah. So I thought that was so cool, man. And those little things and those nuances that you do in the films is what really makes me appreciate it. And I think it also shows the other side of hunting. Like you don't always just show like, I feel like on Sportsman show, the Sportsman channel or whatever it is, I don't know, outdoor channel.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's a lot of just like the perfect scenario, kill shots, 360 bull, and it was in this area. And it's just like, 20 minutes cut to tape or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then like when I was, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to say the film, but I was watching a film the other night and this hunt wasn't successful at the end of it, but it was like, hey, what I got out of this was I got to spend 40 days in the Arctic Circle. I've seen some amazing country and so I love that approach because not all hunters are successful and I'm one of those.
No. Oh my God. I've been, I ran into this guy one time. I don't remember his name. He was on Outdoor Channel for years. This is early on in my career, but he saw our camera in the airport and he's like, "Oh, are you guys going to film?" And he pointed to the other guy that he was with. He's like, "Yeah, we're going on like our 13th or 14th successful hunt in a row on camera." And I was just like, "Wow, and to me I was just like, yeah, I'm sure we'll start a string like that, but that hasn't been the case at all. And just the way we go and how we hunt and what we're looking for. If it was shooting any animal, we could be pretty successful at shooting any animal. But in filming the way that we do and getting the shots that we do, it's
Jeremy's
really
got some of your stuff pulled up right now too.
It's just so time intensive, and it's just setting up the shot and visualizing the shot and telling the story. And we're trying to figure this out. The cinematics of it and what is the story going to be. And, for instance, when we pulled into the barn for Steve, we have my little Tacoma and we're kind of looking at the whole thing. And then William Altman, who did that shot, he's like, well, the spatiality of it, why don't I climb up in the rafters and I'll just put on a little gorilla arm thing and I'll just point the camera straight down and everything will be parallels. And so I was like, yeah, that's great. And so we did that. But for instance, like, we're just trying to film everything in that manner, and then circling back around and just kind of figuring it out, and we didn't know that we were going to hang Steven there and then back in with him and hang him up or whatever, but that's how it went, and the writing and everything, it just is truly who we are, which is why we did that. That Who We Are piece was actually for National Geographic, because they wanted us to do a TV show for them, but they were against hunting. And so they said, why do you want to do a hunting show? And I said, well, I don't have to do a hunting show, but I would love to do a show with hunters or hunting or tribes, or to just kind of show. I said, basically, I want to celebrate the original humans of hunters and gatherers, and there are still people, plenty of them, that live kind of like this, and even ranchers and some people like that, I think, fall under that.
Especially out here, because a lot of them turn into outfitters, and and it's kind of a dual purpose. It's a way to keep the ranch afloat, because if they were just doing it from ranching, it wouldn't. And
even how they tend, even how they're tending their cows, right? They're hopping on horseback, or whatever they're doing. It's just a bigger element than, for instance, where I just was I was just down in Lamar, Colorado, and I saw plenty of ranches in the ranch that I was on raising cattle, in my opinion, the right way. Wild herds grazing over vast areas, but also down there's a stockyard that is, you couldn't fit another cow on this, and they're all, they walk on their feces all day.
Concrete, so they can clean it easier.
Yeah,
right?
So it was, you drive past any of these ranches, and it's beautiful. You drive past that, and not only does it look disgusting, it smells disgusting. So my point is just, I wanted to do something. It's funny, because really what I wanted to do a TV show about was humans, but I just wanted to do some original elements in it, and so then they said, well, we don't agree with hunting, but will you just put together a raw 5, 6, 7 minute, don't edit it, we don't care how pretty it is, will you put together this raw sentiment of why it is that you hunt, and then send it over to us? And I said, great. And we did Who We Are. We were never going to release it ever. In fact, we got in an argument about it. Kyle Nicolite is my business partner at Sick Manta.
Now it's got 2.2 million views.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's been really cool. And so we sent it in Nat Geo. They weren't into it, but everyone else seemed to really dig it.
I love it, man. I've shown it to a few people. As soon as Jeremy walked in the door today, I was like, dude, you got to check this out, because Donnie's coming in. And I just think it's a good way to explain. It makes me feel good and confident as a hunter showing this to somebody, right? Because anything else that they're showing, if they're a non-hunter, or maybe they didn't grow up around it, or maybe they're, straight vegan, or animal rights activist, or something like that, the first thing that they do is just basically stereotype you as a bloodthirsty killing machine, and you're out there just to murder everything, right? Well, like, you might as well be a serial killer.
Yeah, I mean, human beings, if I could just draw a line in the sand, we are ridiculous now. We are full-on Cartoon Network. I mean, we are I don't want to be too judgmental, but where we came from prior to agriculture, and then where we are now post-agriculture, and the beliefs that people have now, or that they think that they have, and and there's elements of it that are very easy to see. For instance, like an animal rights activist. We all love animals. I mean,
I'm an animal rights activist in my own mind. Of course, I don't want those cows standing on a concrete pad in their own feces, and then when they're sent to slaughter, they're trucked in a trailer to some place where they get drugged through their own feces to be processed.
It's sad and horrible to see, and I had a pit in my stomach every time I drove past that. And yet today, when I was hiking, every time I saw beef cows that I crossed the river this morning, and a whole herd of cattle was crossing the river with me, and it was beautiful. And just kind of reminds me of the Old West, and there's markers where I was hiking, the Santa Fe Trail, the original Santa Fe Trail from the late 1800s. So there's markers there saying you're on the Santa Fe Trail. And so these cattle are going, and I just was thinking about the settlers and how badass these people were, the men, the women, the children. Like, these people are unbelievable. And then, when I drive past the feedlot, it just makes my guts turn inside out. And I wonder who works there. Like, how could you even work there? How can you show up there every day and hold your head high? But it doesn't matter. Who we are right now as people with dietary concerns and people with political views and people with, pushing all these different agendas. It drives me insane what we were, who we were, and then who we're now becoming. So when people are anti-hunters, I just think, quite honestly, the only reason you're here is because somebody that you come from knew how to hunt. Otherwise, your section of the tribe didn't make it. Your DNA didn't make it. The original 10,000 humans that were on the face of the earth, white, black, native, it's really funny that we segregate off of pigment in our skin, which has nothing more than almost a relationship to do with how close you are to the equator and how far away you move away from the equator, to how dark your skin is, to how light your skin is. But yet we built up all these stereotypes and all these falsities and all these things that hold really no water at all. And then we kind of have the same thing. Is there's 10,000 original humans. For the most part, all of them were badasses, lean, mean fighting machines that would kill and eat anything that they could get their hands on in a systematic fashion. And now we have anti-hunters. And it's almost, I almost want to say, well, you should maybe just hit yourself in the head with a hatchet many, many times, because you owe your life to that of your ancestry who were badasses and actually went the extra mile to procreate, to make you. It's called natural selection, differential reproductive success. A baby zebra doesn't look back and say, oh, I hate the fact that we have hooves. I just hate the fact that we have manes and we're striped. And my uncle over there, he eats grass on this side of the Serengeti. Who would think? There's very little grass over there. I can't believe he eats over there. I'm ashamed to be a zebra as he is. It doesn't make any sense at all in the animal kingdom. And we are afforded these opinions only off of being fat, uneducated slobs. We are provided for now. Pampered. And if I stab you right now, an ambulance is going to be here in 15 minutes. A long time ago, that wasn't the case. You either fixed yourself or you bled out, and we went on about our lives. And we're pampered too. And because we're pampered, if you were to walk into a house with a serial killer in it, like let's say you had to walk into a house with a serial killer in it, and let's say two or three are in there. It's pitch black. It's raining outside. You have no tools. You just have the shirt on your back and your pants. You have to navigate this house, and you have to get out the other side. You have no rules. There are no rules. If one of these guys attacks you, you will bite his anything. You will rip his throat out. You will use your fingernails, your teeth, any manner you can to kill, maim, and move past this individual to get out the back door of this house. If you go into that same scenario with multiple police officers and you're armed and you have lights and you have guards and you have flak vests on and you have all these protections, now you can suddenly have opinions on this whole thing that's going on. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that if you had to fight for yourself, fend for yourself and that of your family, there would be no specialty diets. There would be no animal rights activists. There would be none of it. It's all
whatever
afforded.
Is available, right?
That's right. It's what you don't have to be a pig about it, but it's whatever's available.
And I kind of have a theory going down the same path, and I think that these theories align. Like, I truly believe that adversity builds bonds, right? So like 100%. Hardship builds bonds. So like my family, we grew up poor. There wasn't a whole lot of money. We bonded together to make that happen. I very easily could have said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to leave and go whatever. But it was like, there was a bond there, right?
Yes.
The hunting that I've done with family members, there's a bond when you actually get a bull down and you're like, shit, man, we shouldn't have shot this thing. It's
so far back.
Or dude, we got to hustle, right? Like we got to phone in some friends or something, right? I don't think that normal people in their day-to-day life that go down to the Shell station and pick up their coffee and go to their cubicle and then come home and watch, Family Guy or whatever it is, and then wake up the next day and do that all over again. And now it's the weekend. Let's go for a hike. I think that that's great, right? To each his own. But there's no adversity there, right? Like there's no hardship. And I'm not saying that everybody grows up like this, but the majority of the population, if you've traveled around the world, is pretty impoverished compared to America. Like we are one of the wealthiest, right? Even the poorest people here are one of the wealthiest, right? Like it's pretty amazing that you can go sit on a street corner with a cardboard sign and make money.
Yeah, make a living. Make a living.
You could make a living, yeah. And I'm not knocking anybody that chooses to live like that either. But I think, 100 years ago, there was still some serious adversity. Not even 100 years ago. Like think about what people went through just during the Great Depression.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's been too long since we've had something like that. If you're not putting yourself in your own adversity and with those people, I think that's why firefighters have such a strong bond.
Oh, yeah.
They see kids drown. I have personal friends that are firefighters. And I come from a firefighter family. I have family members that are in the fire department now. They pull up to car accidents. It's not just firefighting, right? Like, and they're always in a group. And those guys have these unbelievable bonds. I know a lot of former operators, and
team members,
stuff like that, team members and military people, and they have that bond, and I think outdoorsmen kind of have that bond as well. All my roadie buddies, like that's what I went and did, and that's how I got to travel and see the world, was traveling around with rock bands. But a lot of people think you're backstage pounding Jack Daniels and hanging out with rock stars and doing blow, but it's not. It's you're working 18 hours a day, right? Loading trucks, unloading. You might as well be a carny at that point, right?
Yeah.
But the people that are in that industry have sacrificed so much to be in that industry or have a passion for it. And there's some suffering that goes on when you're touring through Europe and you're in Germany and it's 2 a.m. after the show and you have to load trucks in a parking lot. It's fucking cold, right? People are getting frostbite and stuff. And like, why is my finger black? And I'm like, growing up here, I'm like, dude, that's frostbite.
It's gonna come off.
You should have worn gloves at least,
You're going to get a nickname out of this. Yeah.
So I think, those sort of things. And then, people get nicknames. There's a bit of hazing. Now you can't even... You have to call somebody by their pronouns or you're bastardized. You know what I mean? And it's like,
that's not
I just
happening.
think that there's something to having some adversity. So whether you're putting yourself into a CrossFit gym or the outdoors or a fly fishing group or a car group or a mountain biking group, whatever it is, like I think go out and find some adversity, because I think that builds bonds. And it doesn't matter, if you're a firefighter, or I can't speak for the military because I never have served or anything like that, but I'll speak for the roadie world. Like, I didn't care if the guy standing next to me was black, Hispanic,
of course,
whatever. We're all in this together, right? And
no one actually cares.
We've all suffered the same. We're all getting, maybe we're not getting the same paycheck, but it has nothing to do. It comes down to how good you are at your job and how well you get along with people in those industries, especially even in firefighting. Like, the best firefighters don't always make it onto a department.
No,
there's a psychological part that goes into it too, where it's like, how well do you get along with people?
Yeah.
So I think as much as we can, there's got to be some sort of suffering, and then providing for yourself, right? Or having to provide for yourself. I think if we ever had a catastrophic thing, or if somebody was just dropped in the wilderness, I don't think there's very many people. Like, what's the percentage of hunters to the population of America? This is something, Jeremy, you might have to look up, but I think it's less than like 3 or 4%.
Yeah, it'd be something like that. Yeah,
right.
I would
think
I would
it's
say
3 or
something
4%.
like that. Yeah.
So I would say 3 to 4% of those people would have a chance if they were in the right environment.
Yeah, and even a lot of those,
and if they
right?
have the right tools.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I can appreciate people like you that put yourself out there and in these crazy situations in the Arctic Circle and stuff. Like, my buddy Donnie Dust, another Donnie. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I'm not. He sent me a message a while back, but I've never met him. Mm-mm.
Amazing human. So he was just in. He's built all these stone tools. And he's gone back to kind of the primitive way of life. And he grew up, you know, hunting and fishing, I believe. Grew up here in Colorado.
Okay.
Went into the Marine Corps for a while. And then he had all the he's a big time rock climber. Had all the badass gear, you know, $500 sleeping bags and, you know, all the rock climbing gear you can imagine. And that stuff's not cheap. And at one point, I don't know what made him do this, but he just went down and gave it to some homeless guys and was like, I'm going to go back to, that's not why I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to go back to foraging. And so now he's made his whole career and life around that and building stone tools and stuff. Okay, so a new survey by the U.S. Fish and Wild Service. I need glasses. So 5%, 16 years or older actually hunt. Well, I mean, the 16-year-olds or older, I don't even think you can legally hunt in Colorado until you're 12 or older, so that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of states that are dropping. It's declined 50 years ago. Its decline is expected to accelerate over the next decade, just like the propensity
that's from 2018.
Yeah. I think we've seen an increase since COVID. I've definitely seen it here in Colorado.
Sure.
Because I hunt a lot of public land and over the counter because it's hard to draw to get into some of these areas. Like, it's sad. I can't even draw to get into my backyard when I shot my first elk. You know, it's a 6-year, 8-year process now. Yeah. Which I'm okay with as long as we still have elk, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to conserve the resource. That's the thing that a lot of people don't really understand is that very often or most often that these people are looking at these populations and, you know, the travesty in my mind is, you know, the lack of habitat and how much we encroach and how much infrastructure we continue to build as humans. Like I'm in a hotel right now. I'm just as guilty as the next guy. I'm not pitching a tent and sleeping underneath the airport where I'm flying out tomorrow. I'm
God, that would be miserable out there.
In a hotel. I was just thinking about so much garbage when I was driving. Near the airport. I just couldn't believe how messy it was.
Well, I hate to say this, and I apologize to anybody that lives out there. I don't even consider that, like, once you get east of downtown Denver. Yeah. I don't even consider that Colorado anymore. I know that's really bad, but like different. Colorado to me, growing up here, we always went west, right? Yeah. So we were always back in like the western slope, like Flat Tops Wilderness or Wind River, like, you know, that's where I grew up as a kid. And then, you know, here in Georgetown and all over the mountains, Idaho Springs, all these mining towns, you know, and stuff like that. So
it's too bad you can't really just go. That's the thing that people ask me all the time why I don't elk hunt. And I don't elk hunt because there's too many people. It's just my thing. I like to go past where the people are. I like to go to areas that are so dangerous and so desolate that people just really don't want to go there. Yeah. And that's where I like to be.
Yeah, no, and I can appreciate that. I guess I don't get a whole lot of time to hunt. And me growing up here, like, I love elk hunting.
Of course you do.
So much. Yeah. And archery. And
it gives me, I just saw a herd and it gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. And it's so awesome living right here too, because the herds here are kind of domesticated. You know what I mean? Almost like, it's crazy because the bulls come in a couple days before archery season starts and they become golfers. There's a golf course just on the other side of the lake and they're on that. And I live very close to that. So we have a mountain home. You don't really need air conditioning up here. So like if it's hot, you just kind of open the windows at night and then close them in the morning and it keeps the house cool enough, you know? And so at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in September, you get woken up by elk, you know, and it'll be right outside your window, like a second story, so right off the golf course, and they start chasing satellites around. even though they are domesticated elk, I feel like they're almost more in their natural environment because there's no pressure from hunters and there's no,
Sure.
there might be some pressure from photographers or golfers or whatever.
But they behave like elk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember growing up as a kid. And that's where my passion is for elk, like going into a valley in Wind River and just hearing bugles rip like crazy, you know, and like being in the middle of it or getting pissed on by a bull, you know, because he came in closer than you wanted him to. And you know, just the rut and that whole thing. So it's really hard for me because I don't get a whole lot of time to hunt. Just with family obligations, this production life, you know, so it's, I try to spend it here because I enjoy that. And
it's
try
sick.
to spend it with family too, because not everybody. But I would love to get up to Alaska and at least do a caribou or something at some point.
Yeah, it's a special place, especially watching a caribou migrate or watching a big bull moose, which is, you know, kind of like an elk. But you know, I've done one. I've done a couple elk hunts, but I did my first real elk hunt a couple years ago in Nevada, and it was. I hiked into this area, in this wilderness area, and I camped. I was with my crew. I almost just said by myself, but I was with my crew, me and two other guys, and it was cool, man. We hiked up into this big box canyon, and I'd never even really seen a box canyon. You know, I'd read that word or that phrase in many Jack O'Connor books, you know, and him hunting Arizona and talking about muleys in box canyons and desert sheep in box canyons and bighorn sheep in box canyons, and I was like, oh, you know, whatever. And then I got myself into a box canyon. I was like, oh, here's a canyon that's shaped like a box. Like, this is really cool to see this. And went up there and camped in there just on sign. Didn't have any intel. And but you know, lo and behold, just like you said, we're laying in the tent. It's probably midnight, maybe 10 p.m. and there's bulls ripping around us. And I just thought, I know why dudes do this. I really do. I mean, incredible animals, right? We have to pick and choose our where we're going to go and when we're going to go. September is 30 days, August is 30 days, and October is 30 days essentially. And so our time, it just slips right on by. Like you said, family and even other obligations, to see a friend, to have a cup of coffee, to have dinner with a girlfriend or a wife, or you know, it's our time. Just it's
the most valuable thing.
It
really is, by
and large. It's obviously irreplaceable. It can't be chased by money, and it's really the game. It's really what this is all about.
I was so excited too, because I appreciate people that understand that. So I want to be respectful of yours too. So I appreciate you coming up here.
Oh no, this is and I'm happy to.
You messaged me today and you're like, "Hey, my kid's with me. Is that cool?" Or whatever you said. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I was just like, "This is awesome," you know?
Yeah.
Because I love that you're taking him with you. Because that's like, now for me, like I've done a lot. I've been all these places, but now I want my kids to experience it. Like that's one reason, you know. Having my rock and roll career, there was no stopping. Like touring was, you know, year round. If you were lucky, and you just went, and I got to go to some amazing places and work for some amazing people. And it didn't start out that way, you know, it was a grind. And, but it really dipped into me not hunting anymore. You know, I was like, God. So I missed that element, but I was still living at the beach and doing a bit of spear fishing and, you know, a lot of stand up paddle and being out. So that was my connection to nature there. Like, when I lived in LA, I could live more than 2 blocks off the water. I was going to come home. Yeah. Like that was the deal. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't spend a whole lot of time there because we were traveling so much. But yeah, it was full circle for me when I started having kids, and I was like, God, I got to get him out of here.
Yeah.
Like the beach cruiser life is not as much as I love that.
Well, I mean,
I love seeing girls in bikinis.
Yeah,
you know, and I love being
sick.
On the beach cruiser and going
perfect.
Bar to bar.
It's too perfect. Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. And then I was like, God, the biggest. I started thinking back, like, where did I face back to adversity? Where did I face the most adversity?
Yeah.
And it was always on a backpacking trip.
Yep.
It was always in the wilderness, hunting. Those were the biggest struggles for me, mentally, physically. Not playing high school sports. I mean, not that those aren't, but not like
Those are
not
minuscule.
like shooting a big game animal. It's a totally different thing. And then if you get into predator hunting, or if you've ever been on a predator hunt, that's a whole nother level, right? And I've only done that really here in Colorado.
Sure.
I did some bird hunting outside of Colorado. So I can't even imagine spending that time in the Arctic Circle and dealing with some of the stuff that you've done and some of the stuff you portray in your films. But going back to that full circle is like, I want my kids to be able to experience some adversity. And also I think, and I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm going to keep beating this in to people. And I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but I really believe it puts a value on a life, taking a large animal or something. And,
of course.
It's an emotional roller coaster, right? And I think, seeing something bleed out in front of you or maybe it wasn't the best shot, and facing that adversity, because
horrifying.
I think any hunter's gone through that. Yeah. I know I have.
Yeah.
And then, just the whole process of like the excitement, because you've spent 7 days in the backcountry or 7 days elk hunting or whatever. And then you finally get one, and that adrenaline dump of when it does happen. And then the stress of like, oh shit, it's going to be 80 degrees tomorrow. Like,
oh yeah,
we have to get this thing out. The work begins then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't experienced that. I don't know if I've ever had a race against weather in that. I've had races against weather other ways where it's going to blow 100, or I've had that a couple of times in Alaska. I've had hunts ended because I've had pilots call me and say, hey, probably 4 times in my life, I've had pilots message me on my inReach, say, hey, it's going to blow 100 tomorrow. I'm going to be in your camp in an hour. Be off the mountain, be packed, be in my plane, or I have to leave you in a very dangerous situation for many days, or we're going to get a huge snow. I was in Russia years ago, and the guy that I was hunting with spoke. There's 2 guys I was with. One spoke 0 English, one spoke a little English. And I was sheep hunting, and it was the 12th day of a 10-day hunt. So I was already past the 10 days, and I just told them, hey, I'm going. I said, how long can I stay? They said, we don't care. You can stay as long until like we get pushed out of here. And then they said, hey, it's going to snow tomorrow. Can you stay through the snow? And can you stay through the snow, and then we'll resume sheep hunting afterwards? And I said, well, how much is it going to snow? And he said, like 10 to 12 feet. And I said, I think, and this group that I was hunting with, they had a client, either a client and a guide, or just a guide. I forget I think it was both of them, lost their lives the hunt before me because of exposure. But I said, hey, we can't be in these mountains. If it's going to snow 10 to 12 feet, we can't be here. We have to get out and then come back in. Our tent isn't going to handle this. And if it's going to snow that much, it's going to snow too fast for us. We'll be doing maintenance nonstop. And luckily that night, I killed a hammer of a ram in the last glimmering light of that last day, and we were able to get in a helicopter and get out of there. But I've had those types of constraints or dealing with, I've had grizzly bears take my kill, and oddly enough, wolverines take my kill. And I don't know. I just think that adversity that you're talking about, that being uncomfortable, being overwhelmed by bugs, rain, I've had many, many, many hunts.
The bugs are so bad, man. Like, that's the worst thing for me, dude.
Man. I've had some bad ones.
Watching that film, The Other Side, I think. Yeah. Was that the one where you guys had the mosquito nets on, like, half the film?
Oh, yeah. I had maybe...
I was itching, like, watching that. Just
maybe
like
one of the most
it.
perfect days I've ever had in my life, or seemingly. I was in the Arctic. It's springtime. This is me, William Altman, and Lance Kronberger, and it was probably 70 degrees, maybe 75 degrees, hazy, almost full sunlight all day, snow on I was grizzly bear hunting in a bright green t-shirt and pants, and I said to Lance, I said, what an amazing day. This is maybe one of the 10 most perfect days I've ever experienced in my life. And he said, wait till tomorrow. And I said, why? And he said, because I can see it. All of the bugs are hatching right now. He said, starting tomorrow. And it did. The next day we had to run to pee. We honestly had to run around to pee. You couldn't stand to pee. We had to.
God, that's so bad.
We had to come up with strategy to get in the tent. So we would run past the tent and undo the zippers a little bit, and we'd keep running. And then one of us would run around, and then the other one would dive in the tent, seal it up, and then, you basically run around, and then the other guy would open up, and we'd dive in, and it was all strategy. And the bugs were like, and then pretty soon it was funny because the first day, the first hour, you think, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I can't do this. And then you realize an hour turns into a day, and a day turns into 10 days, and then you think, it's no problem, like right here. William Altman obviously was filming this. I wasn't filming myself, but this is one of the only, I've told this story before, but William freaked out right here because we had 2 boar grizzly bears courting a sow. You see the bushes right next to me.
Yeah.
So there's an 8-foot bear, a 8.5-foot big bear, and a 9.5-foot, the biggest grizzly bear I've ever seen in my life, were within 20 yards of us right here in those bushes with this sow, which they'll kill for. And we're down there, and I'm trying to find, and we didn't have a gun. But we couldn't hear the bears because of the mosquitoes. We were having a difficult time orienting where the noise was coming from because the buzz was so loud.
Buzz, yeah.
And William was pretty anxious about it. And I was so focused on trying to find brown fur in the alders that, I wasn't really thinking about the danger, and he kind of flipped out and
wow.
It's all bits and pieces, but it all really boils down to exactly what you were talking about before is, it's time outside. It's like I've been in Colorado now for 2 days. Okay. I came here to do some work down on a ranch that I was going to hunt. I actually hunted it 2 years ago, and then I was just coming to actually grab some of my stuff off the ranch. I'll probably hunt the ranch again because it's amazing. But so I've been here for 2 days, and all I did was I flew into Denver, rented a Jeep with my son, drove down to Lamar, spent a day there, a day and a half, and then drove back up to here to do the podcast with you.
Which is an adventure. It's like
it's probably
400 miles of driving.
Yeah, something like
easily.
That. But I saw dust devils, which is essentially picture a tornado. I saw the largest dust devils I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm 48 years old. I've traveled essentially nonstop since I was in my late teens because I traveled full-time as a biologist. And I've never seen dust devils like this ever in my life. And I mean, I pulled the car over for Grayson and I pulled the car over probably 5 times on the freeway because these things were probably, 200 to 300 feet tall. And, one of them looked legitimately like a tornado. The only reason I knew it wasn't a tornado is because there's no clouds above it. But it was debris. It was large debris circling, and it took my breath away to see it. And then hearing him giggle in the back of the Jeep when it looks like we're being overtaken by these animals called tumbleweed as they just come into the freeway by the hundreds, and this morning we saw a huge flock of turkeys with several strutting toms, and he was asking me about all these different species of birds that we were seeing that we don't see at home, and different ducks that we'd seen, and this 2 days in Colorado basically from the freeway, and driving up here I just saw a herd of elk that literally gave me goosebumps because I pictured when I was coming up the hill I see all the like ponderosa pines and how perfect, like some of these, if you remove all these homes, like I basically was picturing what was it like to come up here when there was nothing here or just a few little mining buildings and this was a dirt road and we had to ride a wagon up here, ride a horse up here, and then seeing a big bull elk or a big mule deer or an antelope or, and I showed him his first antelope and I just little bits and pieces. Like I just saw a really large bull. He didn't have any antlers, but he just was a massive bodied bull just now. And I can picture that stuff without the buildings. I can see right around. It's like all the buildings and the people are a chain link fence for me.
Some of the area around here has been preserved, which is kind of cool, whether it's been bought by Denver Mountain Parks or Jefferson County Open Space. And one of the main reasons I moved back here is there's a major connection to here because we go like 12 generations deep right here in.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Oh. So that meadow used to be the family ranch, the barns that are up there.
Yeah.
The stone house that's now the Evergreen Chamber of Commerce was built by one of my grandfathers.
No kidding.
And, they owned from like Black Hawk all the way to right where you get off on I-70 right there and come down the hill, and there's the big meadow with all the barns in it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like that connection. Like my kids go to the same elementary school that 12 generations did, like, or not 12 generations, but I guess 9 or whatever, right? And the original schoolhouse is there, and it's just a little hand-hewed log 8x10 thing, and that's actually in the bus turnaround. So it's an historic building, and there's a whole nother school built on the outside of it. But like I went to elementary school there, like, so there's like some. I think that there's an appreciation for that too, like coming from it ancestrally, right? Like I think whether you're Irish or African American or African, right? Like there's all this history, and like kind of knowing where your roots, like you came from, and then reconnecting with that, it feels like home, right?
Yeah.
But I'm and I took it for granted growing up young.
Of course.
But I'm so fortunate that it was here because that was an everyday thing, and it's changed a lot, like a ton. Like there weren't all these homes everywhere. There wasn't a Walmart. There wasn't a McDonald's that you passed, and 3 Starbucks, and So,
but it's cool.
It is very cool that some of that is still preserved, and then it's open space, so anybody can go and experience it, right? Like you can't hunt on some of it, but
that's okay.
But there's still wilderness areas that we've gone generations deep. Like my first camping trip was, and where I shot my first elk is gone generations deep, which is kind of cool too. But I think just whether you grew up that way or not, you can start that new trend, and you can get outside and you can experience some of this stuff. And, I urge people, like, if you haven't done it before, hire a guide, and you can learn very fast.
Don't go at it alone if you don't.
Yeah.
I've had a few people write me recently. This young lady was writing me, and she said she has her heart set on, in Colorado here. It's either Colorado or Wyoming. She has her heart set on going into the backcountry by herself and shooting an elk and quartering it up. And she's written me and said, hey, like, where do you find elk? How do you find elk? Where's a good spot to go in Colorado? And I have no idea. If I was coming to Colorado, I have hunted elk in Colorado a few times, but, I have to either go with somebody that knows what they're doing or do my own research. And it's difficult to do because people want to keep their spots to themselves. And so I just told her, I said, please don't. And I know there's a young lady out of Wyoming. I met her. I don't recall her name, unfortunately, but I met her at a film premiere in Lander, Wyoming. I think she's actually Miss Wyoming. But her father and her brothers run pack horse trips up in the mountains, and she does an all-woman trip a few times a year where she takes everyone. Yeah, and so I told this lady, I said, you should go do something like that or whatever, because it's dangerous, right? And you get up there and you get turned around, and I have been, a lot of people say that, they talk about being lost, but I have been lost, as in it's wintertime. I have fallen through the ice on a lake. There's 3 feet of snow. I have quite honestly no idea which direction to walk. I've walked all of the directions because I felt good about something for a short amount of time and had this panic and walked for, 2 days straight and then finally found my way out. But if you do something like that in the wrong place, and you're going to lose your life.
It's super important.
You're going to lose your life.
I've been caught in some crazy situations myself. I've been lost in a place that I've been hundreds of times. The weather moves in or something, fog.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother ball game. So I strongly urge people, like, go take a class, and there's plenty of survival schools and all these people that teach. We've had a ton of these guys on. At least the basics of map and compass, not GPS. Like I think that's super important. Like having a topo map of the section that you're going into, and there's millions of different maps that you can go and buy. These National Geographic topo maps that have all the wilderness trails on them and where you might cross a trail, and it's topographical, so you can pick out geological features, right?
Yeah.
And recognize them. And just learning that skill set. And then if you want to take it a step further, like shooting an azimuth and getting coordinates, and then you can do it from latitude and longitude, right? Without a GPS. This is not electronics. Like there's ways that
navigation.
You can do this, true navigation. And I think that is probably one of the most valuable skills, whether you have an inReach or not, to give somebody your true coordinates. If your Garmin's not working, or your spot, or your lines of communication when you're in the backcountry, if you need to be rescued, if somebody's needs to be rescued, what if your kid, needs something?
What if your pilot crashes on the way out and loses his life, and he's the only one that knows where you are?
Yeah, so I think that I would urge anybody to start there. And then I'm so fortunate because I was growing up and taught this stuff as a kid by uncles, and I didn't grow up with a dad. My dad was a piece of work. Like I don't even know what he was into, because we didn't have that relationship. Like I never hunted, but thank God I had grandfathers and uncles and cousins and all the stuff that this is what they were into. So I was able to learn from them, and some of them were outfitters at a certain point. And I didn't just learn here in Colorado. One of my uncles to this day still lives up in northern Montana, right up around the Canadian border, Glacier National Park, and that's amazing country, and a whole nother type of country to navigate in, right? Like
very dense.
So I was fortunate to have that too. So when I felt comfortable here, just travel up there, and it's a whole nother level.
Another experience.
But I would urge anybody to start right there with at least basic navigation skills, and then get a map. And a lot of these trailheads or wilderness areas, sometimes there's a map right at the trailhead, they're provided right by the state and stuff. Some of them aren't big, but like some of the open space ones. So at least, and they're topographical. They're great,
And look around. I've done a lot of trips where I'll hike into an area and I'm looking. I don't even have a map. I don't have a compass. I don't have, but I'm hiking and I say, okay, so here are these two mountains. I'm willing to go. I'm honest with myself. I'm willing to go to the valley between these two peaks. And as I'm going, I keep turning around, because when I turn around to leave, it's not going to look anything like I'm coming in. So I keep turning so the lake is down here, and I'm recognizing I can see the full breadth of the lake. And then I hike further up, and I turn around and say, okay, I can see half the lake. Okay, now I can see a third of the lake. Okay, now I can't see the lake anymore, but now I can see the stream that's running into it. And so then on my way out, and I say, okay, so I'm going to come down the side. I can see the stream. Okay, there's the first third of the lake. I'm on the right track. There's a second third. There's the entire lake. I'm certainly getting close to the trailhead and figuring my way out. And, and it's a way to pick it apart.
Yeah, and it's great if you have your kids and you're taking them on a hike to teach them exactly what you just said. That's how I first learned, And it's like just being aware of your surroundings, right? Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought because you just took me down memory lane right there. What was I just talking about? Your phone. Oh God, technology. Here we go.
No, you were talking about
just the basics. Yeah, I'm sorry. So back to it. So hire an outfitter. Because I was fortunate enough to grow up with those influences, and you'll cut so many corners. I mean, the reason why I'm a good hunter today is strictly attributed to those guys teaching me just some basic skills, so yeah. Dude, we're already an hour in. Do you have a little bit more time to hang out? I want to be respectful of your time.
I do.
We're a little over an hour. I guess for me, I try not to let other podcasts influence me.
Sure.
So I didn't want to go back and listen to a bunch, and I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times, but what kind of got you into this, and what got you into traveling to the Arctic Circle and that whole sort of thing, and then going down that biology road? I mean, there's so many rabbit holes that we can dive down.
Yeah.
But just kind of the basics, like it always is puzzling to me, like how somebody grew up, and then how did you end up in this situation?
Well, it's funny, and I've caught myself kind of going down two different directions, but oftentimes I've told people that I didn't grow up in a hunting household, which is true. However, there were elements of the home that I grew up in where there was certainly a kit that a hunter would own. My father owned a kit, is how I'll say it. He had a wooden gun cabinet. He had half a dozen guns. He had a 12 gauge and 22s and 410s and things like that. He had a 243 bolt action rifle and then he had this old wooden bookcase, and it was a great bookcase. And I don't know, now that I understand who we were as people and where we came and how we evolved and how natural selection works, I understand now where this must live in my DNA. But when I was coming up, I didn't really understand it, right? And until there's a young lady from National Geographic, we were having coffee, and she said, "So why is it that you hunt?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's super easy." And then I sat there across from her, and I was like, I thought to myself, oh my God, I don't know why I hunt. I don't know why. Because I don't have to hunt for food. I can go to the grocery store like everyone else, and plus I was a young man then, and you can just go camping. It's super expensive to go bighorn sheep hunting, but it's free to go camp next to bighorn sheep. Right. And so I start, and then that's when I started really looking into what it is to be a human being and where it is that we come from, our ancestry. And when I was growing up with my dad, everything wildlife and everything wild was super romantic to me. And so even looking at the wood on my dad's guns was romantic to me, and the wood gun case was romantic to me. And then he had this, I wish they still had this stuff today, but my grandparents and my grandfather, my dad's dad, was not a hunter, but he was an awesome saltwater fisherman. I grew up in Connecticut. So he loved, I shouldn't even say he was an awesome fisherman because I have no idea what type of fisherman he was, but he loved to go fishing with his family. And so they would go out and they'd catch bluefish and black bass and all this stuff. And he loved to be on the water. And so, which is essentially the same thing as hunting, right? There's so many things that are basically just like hunting, but, fall into a different category. But, and then my grandparents bought my dad a book subscription to Outdoor Life, not a magazine subscription, a book subscription. And back then, Outdoor Life had all these fantastic editors and authors, and namely the one that I quote the most is Jack O'Connor, who's a famous gun writer for Outdoor Life. He was chief editor, I think, for Outdoor Life for 10 years or something like that. And he's an extremely gifted writer. He was a literary professor at the University of Arizona. And so I started reading all of these books, and they were romantic as hell, and they told the truth. And he talked about traveling from Arizona, and he talked about the wild game, and he described these animals perfectly. He talked about their, this ram had a plump belly, and this ram had a colic, and for some reason this stone sheep had flecks of gray, and he just described these things because he was in love with them too.
And were these actual books, or was this... It was a magazine to print? So
no, these were
photos?
Books.
Okay.
These are like big, heavy. Some of them are huge. And
almost like an encyclopedia for the outdoors or something. I never experienced those, but I always had the Outdoor Life magazines. Yeah.
Same. I didn't have those when I was growing up. Like I said, my dad didn't. My dad probably went hunting 5 times when I was growing up. Something like that. He'd go off with friends or whatever, and so there's nothing, there's nothing came from it like that. But I just, maybe I got it from these books, maybe, and I just read these things, and I looked at all the different, and I just wanted to go and explore. And just like I did the last 2 days here, the simplest of things, like I watched a meadowlark this morning sitting on a fence post, displaying and calling, and trying to attract a female, or just even announcing that he made it another night and that the sun is coming up, and that stuff moves me. And so seeing all of these different things, I just wanted to go. And originally I'm certain it was kind of man versus wild, right? I had this in like, I'm going to go bear hunting, and I remember my first big trip to Alaska. I thought to myself, I'm going to go bear hunting, and I'm going to kill I'm going to kill a big bear, and I'm going to kill my bear with one shot. That's what I'm going to do.
Is there some mentorship from like Fred Bear or any of these guys?
Oh,
like
for sure.
Stuff like that.
Like Fred Bear was some of those books were written by Fred Bear. Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
And so all of that stuff and it was also funny because even though I shot a bow a little bit when I was a kid, I wanted to be a rifleman. There was an element of, in some of these books, oddly enough, that my dad had were on war. So he had some really fantastic books on war and these fantastic paintings of these, ships being bombed and paintings of Pearl Harbor and all these things. And so I don't know why I didn't go into the military or into the special forces or try to get into a group, because that stuff really speaks to me, and fighting for people that can't fight for themselves really speaks to me. But I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't go that route. I don't have a good excuse, and other than my mind didn't go there, and I didn't have a good mentor that said, hey, I think you'd be a good fighter and go this direction. And but I just was in love with the idea of wildlife and in love with the idea of going and I just wanted to see it. And the more I saw, the more I experienced, the more I was drawn to it. And I get letters from people all the time now, and they say, I'm obsessed with hunting. I'm, Sitka has this, they say, I'm sick for it. And people write me and say, how can I get a job like you're doing? How can I come and work for you? I'm obsessed with hunting. And I think to myself, I'm not obsessed with hunting. I'm obsessed with wildlife and wild places and weather and seeing different things. And if somebody told me today, right now, like, you're done hunting, you can never hunt again. You, Donnie Vincent, can never hunt again. Okay? If I'm still going to get really clean and healthy meat for either from rancher friends of mine or from hunting friends of mine, I could easily not ever hunt again. Would I miss it? Yeah, there'd be a gaping hole in who I am and what I love to do. But if I could still go and backpack and still belong to these animals and someone was still hunting, like I see outdoor photographers sometimes kind of write in the idea or write in the semblance that they are anti-hunters. I see them writing, and it just drives me insane.
It drives me insane too, because the reason why I go out and photograph, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but the reason why I go out and photograph, and some of these guys that I like to support, like Jason Loftus that we've had on the podcast, he's a bow hunter himself. I love the way that he portrays elk and the animals, and some of the photos that he takes are just mind-blowingly amazing. Untamed Images on Instagram is just an incredible page.
Yeah, and it's a celebration, right?
It's a celebration and an appreciation for that animal. And even though he's a hunter, right, he still has this massive appreciation for the animal. So to see a photographer turn around and go the exact opposite direction and bastardize hunting and where we've come from and all those points that you just brought up a few minutes ago and some of the points that you brought up in your films,
it's
drives
tough.
me insane, because if you've spent any time with these creatures, and I really think that, like, photographers like Jason, like, he spends a vast amount of time in the outdoors.
Has to.
And I know that I
don't
spend
see this
more
stuff unless you
time
do.
understanding animal behavior from photographing than I do actually hunting, because you're hunting, right? You're like, the animals are more scarce. And I guess that's where I was kind of getting back to, like, seeing them on the golf course. I feel like they're kind of in their natural state, and you can understand animal behavior, and you're trying to catch and anticipate and get in front of them, or get this shot or get that shot with his antlers laid back, and or their nostrils flaring, or like so anticipating and spending real time immersed in them. I don't see how somebody could be numb to the actual concepts of conservation, true conservation, and not understand it spending that much time in the wilderness.
Totally. And I saw this guy one time, and this is really amazing work, but I saw this guy one time, and he took some really great photos of some wolves on Vancouver Island. And then he wrote, now, of course, if I was a moron hunter, I would have killed these wolves. And I was really offended by that, because I personally have spent an crazy amount of time with wolves in the outdoors, both as a biologist. I've been around them so much as a hunter. I've seen them many, many times with a wolf tag in my pocket, and I've never shot a wolf, and I'm not against wolf hunting in the least. I just hadn't been in the position yet that I've pulled the trigger myself. But this guy says, yeah, of course, he obviously made a blatant statement, and all these people below him, all these tree huggers were just jumping on his comments. Oh yeah. And it really kind of blew my mind. And because really that's just really where my mind goes. Like even seeing these images here, really what a celebration of what is wildlife and seeing these animals and behaving like these animals. And so that stuff, it just really inspires me. And the reason I hunt, it's my way of kind of navigating through the wilderness or through wild areas. I want to have my bow or my rifle with me, and I want to see the animals. And it's one of the reasons why I really focus on taking specific animals, because I want to see lots of animals. I want to pick them apart, maybe find the biggest bull elk I can find, work on my craft, set up, take his life swiftly, and then going down there and skinning him and feeling, the blood on my hands and cooking it later over the fire. It just makes me feel exorbitantly alive. It's what really, it's not that I have to take a life to fill my full, but it's really important. It's really, really important that we do these things and that we understand the significance of taking a life and what it feels like and what it looks like and what it means to the world and what animals we're removing. And I honestly, I think, and I'm making some blanket statements here, but like grizzly bear hunting being shut down in BC, that was shut down by foolish people. Most of them will never see a grizzly bear because they're sitting in their apartments, and sometimes
in the city of Vancouver, really.
Yeah. And one time, and I kind of chuckled at this, and I won't say the guy's name, but people sit at home and they watch, and I'm just going to name some things so that people have a association, but I don't mean this exactly. But for instance, people will watch Planet Earth, and they'll think to themselves, wow, these guys must really love wildlife. These guys must really take these shots to the next level. Like, look at what they're capturing. Look at what they're doing. And again, I'm just picking on Planet Earth, right? But I know a guy that went and filmed snow leopards in the Himalayas. And I was talking to him, and we were on a backpacking trip, and he didn't bring some very important gear on this backpacking trip, and we kind of chuckled about it. We were fine. Everything was fine. He was a little bit chilly, but everything was fine. But I gave him a lot of my gear, surplus stuff that I brought. But we were kind of laughing about it. And I said to him, I didn't tell you to bring this gear. I said, how funny, I assumed that you would bring this gear. And he said, yeah, how funny that I assumed that I didn't have to bring this gear. And we were kind of chuckling at our lack of communication. And then I said, well, you went and filmed snow leopards in the Himalayas. And he said, yeah. I said, well, how was that? Didn't you have to have all this gear when you did that? And he's like, no, I slept in a hotel every single night, took a hot shower every single morning, had hot meals delivered to me, had hot lunches. And I said, well, wait a minute. And he's like, oh yeah, the snow leopards are right on the edge of town. He's like, it's stacked with photographers.
Really?
Stacked with people filming this.
Because they make it like this elusive, like one of the most elusive one of the most elusive animals to photograph.
Yeah, and so here, and he actually spoke to this here, and I wasn't there. I don't have the story. I'm sure there's a little bit of telephone game here, but one of the leopards she fell to her death or something happened while he was there. And some of the locals were blaming the harassment of wildlife photographers and filmmakers for pressuring these animals. And, they couldn't hunt, to speak to the elk on your golf course. They couldn't hunt the way they really wanted to because they were limited because of the intrusion of people. And so right there, very often people that are strolling through REI or strolling through Trader Joe's are, kind of giving you a coarse eye of what you're doing and how you're doing it. But really, they're impacting wildlife in a totally different way, and maybe even a more negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And
the frequency of it, like
yes.
even it's affected the elk herds here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they talked about, and I've seen this in Alaska when I was hiking in a mountain valley to go hunt Dall sheep. A friend of mine had drawn a tag in a hunting area where it was called a walk-in area. We had to hike, I think it was 17 miles before we could legally start hunting. And we saw some huge bull moose in this area. Some of the biggest bull moose and I've seen some giants, 75-inch bulls I'm talking about.
Oh my God.
And I'm looking at these
awesome.
things, and then I started glassing with my binos, and I started looking. They're surrounded by photographers, completely surrounded by people with these huge lenses. And if I bump into one of these things in the wilderness, we're doing the same thing.
It gets crazy even
Yeah.
right here, just
Yeah.
with the photographers that go out. And I kind of go out with a small group, and we're really good about not tagging
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And they already hate me enough for the podcast and
Sure.
drop it, but it's hard in conversation not to drop
Yeah.
spots every once in a while,
Yeah.
right? But I'm not giving people specific locations, but there is so much frequency, and especially on the weekends, that I don't even go because I might get in a fist fight.
Yeah.
And I'm not a guy to get in a fist fight. There's a reason why I go to jiu-jitsu and like all this stuff, right? It's to release all that tension. But
Yeah.
people are blatantly, they'll yell, they'll scream, they'll honk horns, it gets crazy around.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking
and it's
about.
always on a weekend, you know?
And whereas you might have a hunter who books an airplane, flies 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, sets up his pup tent, and goes about by foot the whole time, finds a caribou bull he wants to kill, arrows it, the animal goes down, skins the whole thing out, takes every ounce of meat, including the heart and liver, hikes back to his camp, has a little fire, a cup of coffee for celebration, cooks some fresh steaks, loads it all on an airplane at the end of 10 days, flies it home, and that's the animal that he eats that winter and gets a bad name because he's a hunter. Whereas what we just described, yet, most wildlife photographers, no one would cast any, and I'm not saying anything about them, I'm just saying in that particular instance that I was talking about, the snow leopard, that was sold as a very raw and a very wild and a very elegant piece of footage, when really it was 30 guys lined up trying to watch this cat hunt and affecting her and whatever else. I just get sensitive to it, and just like that guy that shot those wolves on
I think
Vancouver
those people
Island
should walk everywhere too. Because your chances of hitting an elk up here, like if you lived here for a certain amount of time, I would say there's probably, if you're here for 10 years, there's 100% chance that you're going to have a collision with wildlife, whether it's a mountain lion, a bear, a deer, elk. I mean, it's constant around here because there's so many roads and so many, and you should walk everywhere then. Yeah. If you're anti-hunting, because at the same time, you're probably screwing up the system more than actually protecting it by driving your car.
Yeah,
honestly, and I know that Game and Fish accounts for those numbers, but still,
all of us have a
it's
footprint.
It's hypocritical, right?
Yeah. All of us have a footprint. Like you see the numbers on, veganism, right? Soy, the crops of soy and the crops of corn, and each to each their own. But some of the hunters that I've met in my life have been the most soulful, connected. They'd be the first ones to give up hunting. Or
I think you portrayed that really well, and no spoiler alerts here, but I can't remember exactly what film it was, but I remember you're on a caribou hunt. You guys were hunting from a boat, I think.
Oh, yeah, Winds of Adak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which is available on YouTube for free, I think, right?
Yep, we did that film
That's
for
an
Benelli.
amazing film.
Yep.
It's an amazing film. I forgot about that. And you go into the old military base there and are looking at it. Like, it's much more than just hunting.
Yeah.
But anyways, you're out there on a caribou hunt, and you come across, like, it was like a fishing net or just some rope. Like
fishing
rope, right?
Net rope.
And there's a caribou caught in it.
Yep.
And I remember your exact words and your urgency, because you're very not soft-spoken, but you have a demeanor about you in your films and when you're talking and stuff. And your demeanor totally changed. It was like, somebody give me a knife right now. Give me a knife right now. And here you are hunting this very animal that you're freeing from a bad situation because you don't want to see it suffer.
Yeah, and it's really funny because I got a lot of flack from that.
Did you?
Yeah, well, not flack for saving the caribou, but they told us, hey, there's not a very good, but there's a good chance that we can capsize this Zodiac going to this beach. So have all of your stuff put away. Donnie, when you're going in, guys, hold on to the camera. Donnie, hold on to your rifle, hold on to your backpack. And so my knives were put away. But Scott, the guy that was running me in, he had his knife on his hip. And so that the caribou, the reason I was urgent is because at first I was looking at it and thinking, oh, okay, he's all wrapped up. We'll try to get him free. But then when I got up there, one of the lines was he was chin strapping himself. He was literally cutting off his carotid arteries in his trachea. Yeah. Oh, he was killing. Like he was very near the end of his life, and so I had to cut that rope first without cutting his carotid artery. Right, they lie right on either side. And then
to put yourself, the first thing that I thought of is like, oh my God, could you imagine stabbing yourself or cutting yourself bad?
Oh, he almost got us a couple of times. Like his back points, like literally going past my eye socket.
But not even that with your own knife, right? If he bumps into you the wrong way, I think there's a lot of people that injures themselves in the backcountry field dressing, and you get pretty serious.
You want to know a freaky story that I don't even know if I should tell right now? But right here where this caribou is, there's a. And I'm not celebrating this on any form or fashion, but there's a corpse of a man laying here right now. Right now today,
way.
Yeah. There's a ship sank. The swell that we went through to get here.
So is that rope maybe from that?
No.
There's
something? Oh no, there's rope like that everywhere on the beach.
Really?
And this bull I think was trying to. He was getting ready to rut, so he was rubbing his
bulls
antlers in it.
Bulls here get stuck in kids' swing sets all the time.
Just like that.
Yeah.
But there was I know a guy that was on this part of the island recently, and there's a life raft, and there's a dead man there right now. Yep, they'll get him this spring when the swell comes down. But
that is crazy.
Yeah,
I've never been to the Bering Sea, but I have some family members that have gone up there and fished.
Yeah,
and done deadly crab fishermen and stuff like that.
Yeah, they've
told me some pretty crazy stories.
It's gnarly. Yeah. It's really we saw stuff on this day that I thought, I don't know if I thought I was going to lose my life, but I've been scared many times in our filming, but this day was the scariest thing. Some of the cliffs that I've had to cross with ice on it, definitely, like where Cam's...
Majority of hunters fall to their death or get struck by lightning.
Yeah. Where Cam's friend fell to his death. I had to cross some cliffs in there during a winter archery doll sheep hunt that were, it's basically, 1,000 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet straight down, and just, Yeah, that dude.
Yeah.
That was
so this is so cool. So people that are just listening to this, you freed the caribou after probably 15 to 20 active minutes of somebody holding antlers and you cutting with a knife and you holding antlers, and it was a bit of a fight, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, you free this caribou and it's sent back to nature. So
he's off to the races.
We're running a little short on time, and one of the main things I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
We've gone through a ton of wolf controversy here in the state of Colorado recently. I did 3 full episodes on it before it even made it to the actual ballot box, and I was trying to have both sides on and be as fair as I could. I only got one side to come on those 3 episodes.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And we got duped even on that side, on the conservative side. Like, we're going to send you, I was asking for Biologist only.
Yeah.
And I want to get into, I'll tell you off camera, but, but yeah, they switched guests on me at the last minute.
Oh.
So it was one of those deals where it's like, well, so-and-so isn't available, but he's coming up
this
now.
Guy's the same.
And then next thing I know, I'm like talking to a politician and not a biologist, right?
Yeah.
So, great. Conversation went great. We had a conversation before I hit record too.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, that whole thing went down. We voted for wolves to be here in Colorado. Wolves, I don't know if people know this, but wolves have been migrating in already from the Yellowstone area.
Of course they would.
It's great habitat for them. And it's crazy because we have a lot of hunters in here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are new to hunting. Some of them have been hunting a long time. Nobody's really had to deal with wolves unless they've been in BC or some of these other spots. But I don't feel like, I don't feel like they've really had interactions with wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried as a photographer. I've gone to Yellowstone and tried to go find wolves.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it was 8 days of finding one wolf that I saw come out of the tree line for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And he was so far away. If I had a 1200 millimeter lens, I don't think I would have got a worthy shot.
Yeah.
Like, it was just mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
And I saw I saw bears, I saw foxes, I saw bald eagles, all these other species, which was great. So I wasn't like butthurt about it. Right? I got all these amazing photographs that I wouldn't have got if I wasn't out actually looking for wolves. But I did that trip specifically to go look for wolves.
Yeah.
Very elusive animal. It's like going to look for a mountain lion, in my opinion, and from what I've seen. And I really wanted to ask you this because we have so many people we have so many people that have all these opinions.
Yeah.
But I feel like out of all those people, you being a biologist, working for Alaska Game and Fish at one point,
mm-hmm.
and having as much interaction as you've had in the Arctic Circle and BC and
I've been around
just those northern territories, you've been around them a ton. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on it. I mean, one of the biggest concerns that I have is the population here compared to some of these other areas where wolves do have this amazing habitat. I mean, there's 7 million people in the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
And I think Wyoming is like 700,000 or something.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking huge difference in frequency. And
I'm embarrassed to admit this, but the vote got approved.
Yes.
To reintroduce them.
Yeah. So by 2023, they need to have, and I apologize for this, but CPW or Colorado Parks and Wildlife just came up with their action plan that was approved. And I think that they have to have reintroduced, I think it's going to be about 32 packs of, or it might be 4 packs of 30 different wolves. Right? And we already have, they already
That's
have
a lot of wolves.
They already have, I want to say that there's 12 that are collared that are here now already that have migrated in. So we're looking at, I don't think the packs are going to be 30. I think they're going to split it 15 and 15 and drop them in 2 different areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, 30 wolves in a pack would be.
They're dropping them right in the middle of the state, which is the Continental Divide, which is right outside of here. Like if you drove west 40 minutes.
Yeah. And what's the housing, what's the people housing like in the roads and such?
Well, I mean, you have I-70, which is a main artery for the United States.
Yeah. They're not going to do well.
They're going to drop them close to the Vail corridor.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a ski resort. And
I mean, people, some people might think that, people are going to start being killed. That's not going to happen. The wolves don't behave in such a manner for the most part. There's only been 1 or 2 documented, and I've been surrounded by wolves. Within 20 yards, I've probably been surrounded by wolves. Probably 5 times, 6 times, something like that. A legit pack around me, and I've never felt. I've definitely been cautious of the engagement, but I've never felt in any danger at all. But this is going to go probably much worse than people anticipate. It's going to be really hard on your ungulate populations, and it's going to be really hard on all of the other populations as well, down to horny toads, to snakes, to ground-dwelling birds, to because if they can't catch the large ungulates, then they're going to have to prey on dogs, cats. They're not going to kill children.
We just lost a couple dogs already last week in Jackson County from the wolves that had migrated. And
you did?
Yeah. They lost 3 dogs.
Killed by wolves?
Killed by wolves.
Yeah, so that's what they're going to eat, because catching a German Shepherd takes 1/100th of the effort to catch a calf elk. It's
oh yeah. I mean, if you've ever seen coyotes work, if you've grown up here, we've lost several dogs to coyotes.
Oh, sure.
Because they'll send out like a satellite coyote that's like, "Hey, buddy, you want to play?"
Yeah.
And they chase them.
And
your
kill
dog
'em.
chases them right
Yeah.
into the pack.
Yeah, and if you have 3 or more, it's going to be a tough thing. So, you know, I think they're probably doing, and I'm not educated on it. I would imagine this got approved by the granola crowd, because they want photographs of wolves, and they want to live in they want your little C emblem to have a howling wolf in the middle for the gift stores, and so people can say, I skied in Colorado and I saw a wolf next to Vail. I'm in real wilderness. This is real wilderness.
I think it's the documentary, and I can't remember what it is, but there's a documentary that was put out on YouTube, and I think it's How the Wolves Changed Yellowstone, and it's the same narrator from one of those major wildlife shows that you mentioned. I think
David Attenborough or something like that.
And it's just, I don't know.
And I'm not saying wolves.
I'm not saying wolves are bad either.
No.
But I think there's a place for them.
Yeah, and they need huge wilderness, you know, and they need to be controlled. I'm going on a predator hunt in a couple of weeks in Alaska. I'm going to hunt. If you kill a brown bear in Alaska, you can't hunt brown bears for another 4 years. Okay, if you kill one brown bear, you have to take 4 years off. Well, I'm going to an area of Alaska in April to kill a brown bear, to hunt brown bears. But very rarely do I go on a hunt where I say, hey, I'm going on a hunt to kill an animal. Sometimes when I'm hunting white-tailed does, I say, hey, I'm going out tonight to actually try and kill a white-tailed doe. Like the first white-tailed doe that comes by is getting an arrow. The second white-tailed doe that comes by tonight is also getting an arrow. The third one she's also going to get an arrow as well if I have legal tags. Well, I'm going on a brown bear hunt this spring in western Alaska that is in a predator area, in an area of which if I kill a brown bear, I can continue to hunt brown bears in successful years because it doesn't count towards my 4-year layoff, because they need bears and wolves killed in this area because of their preying on caribou and moose. And the gentleman that I'm going to hunt with, he hunts wolves right now, and he has I've flown with him a couple of times now. He's talked to me in his headset about wolves, and you can hear the glimmer in his voice. You can hear his inflection go up when he talks about the wolf. You can hear him, the admiration that he has for these animals. And that same man shoots wolves out of his airplane. He flies his Super Cub by his knees and kills wolves out of his airplane window with a 12-gauge shotgun all winter long. He does it for the state. And they need to be regulated. They're very successful keystone predators. I can't speak intelligently about how the Yellowstone project has went. I would have to look more into it. I know, there's a lot of political motivations there, but bring them into Colorado. Being uneducated in the actual system here, I'm leaning towards, it feels like the system is too small for wolves, in my opinion. It feels like there are too many people here, and I can almost guarantee you that it got approved off of people that are looking for tourism dollars. They haven't given 1 ounce of recognition, respect, or interest in the actual wolf. The fact that these wolves are going to have to come into areas where people are, which is terrifying for a wolf, and kill a house pet to eat, that's horrifying for a wolf. Are you kidding me? No, like these wolves that just killed a dog. That's true. That's a fact. These wolves that just killed a dog, like they didn't want to do this. This is throwing them.
They'd much rather eat elk, I'm sure.
Yeah, they'd much rather eat elk, or they'd probably, if they're going to kill a dog, they'd much rather kill a wolf from another pack, right? They're very territorial. Like these packs are going to decimate one another. Like if they cross over, there's going to be a war, and they'll kill one another. And I just think a lot of this stuff gets passed for tourism dollars, and gets passed because now we can throw a wolf on our, and there might even be some.
Yeah, I don't know if this is credible, but this is from the Westward. It's saying, though, estimates vary. I don't think that's accurate, Jeremy.
1,000 wolves.
I don't think
I know,
it's accurate.
it seems crazy.
I've actually had Colorado Parks and Wildlife in here, and we've discussed this, and they've discussed numbers, and we just recently did an episode, so I think that this is just propaganda.
Sure.
So I'm not even going to share that.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I know that they're looking for the population to grow here, and I know that they've changed some they've changed some hunting areas that are pristine elk country to support those wolves. And
sure.
I don't know. I just hope that we're doing the right thing and it's not ruining Colorado for what I know it as, right? And what I grew up. And I understand the argument that they were here at one time, and I also understand that there's 7 million people here now.
Yeah,
it's crazy. There's the city of Lakewood, which is just a suburb of Colorado, like a small little suburb.
Yep.
That's the population of the entire state of Wyoming.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective.
Yeah.
So I think that there's going to be conflict, whether it's on the highways, whether it's people losing their pets. There's a ton of ranchers that are in the Flat Tops Wilderness, which I believe, Jeremy, you might have to look up the exact acreage of that, but I want to say it's like 110,000 acres or something like crazy.
Yeah.
Like a crazy wilderness.
Yeah.
Like next to the Bob Marshall, I think it's second or third or something.
Yeah,
like
it's gonna create conflict for sure.
Okay, there you go. 235,000 acres.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sheep ranchers that are up there too, and they're gonna have to deal with that.
Oh yeah.
And, so I think there's a tremendous impact, not only to just hunting, to wildlife in general. Like I think one of the things that I struggle with is growing up here, we never had moose as a kid. And now the moose population is finally thriving here enough to where they can be hunted. And it's so cool to see them. And like, they're just a majestic animal, right? Like it's incredible that they're here. Like, and I understand that. And we've done it with other species like the lynx. It was a good fit here.
Bighorn sheep.
Yeah. Bighorn sheep. And all those efforts, and I just feel like we're going the opposite direction by putting another apex predator here because we already have enough mountain lions, and the coyotes are big enough.
Coyotes do very well here, right? Symbiotic. Well, same with lions, very symbiotic relationship. But yeah, I think, and it's almost I almost wish this is a pie in the sky, but I almost wish when you were able to vote on these things, like you had to list off your street credit and your education and your experience. Like if there's a housewife or a house husband in Boulder who, he's got his puffy jacket, he's got his nano puffy from Patagonia, and he drives his Subaru, and he's drinking his dark beer next to his bonfire outside of his house, and he tends to flip on the Nature Channel and climbs rock climbs twice a year and mountain bikes, and then when he sits down on the ballot, he's like, yeah, dude, wolves for sure, dude, love wildlife. Yeah. Wolves are going to love it here, dude. I love it here. Wolves are going to love it here. Well, that guy that's an empty bucket, to where if you have an educated biologist, a wolf biologist or an ungulate biologist that says, you know what? We have a corner of the state, I'm making this up, we have a corner of the state that is about 500,000 acres, has a minimal human population. There is going to be some conflict with ranchers there, but we have ungulate populations that we think would support 1 or 2 packs out there. I'm going to vote yes. I'm going to vote yes because I think it could work, or I'm going to vote maybe we need to look at this again in 5 years or something like that. Maybe there's 3 checks on this ballot, but the majority of the people have no. It's just like the people that shut down grizzly bear hunting. Those people don't even leave the city. They don't even leave the city.
They don't have to deal with
the closest thing they do to being around wildlife is turning on their TV, and it's not that they don't have to deal with grizzly bears, although I appreciate your point. It's that they don't even know what the grizzly bear is. They don't know what the habitat looks like where the grizzly bear lives and what he does and what he's doing, and I'll guarantee you if we took vegans or vegetarians or whatever, we took them hunting. And I mean, if I took a vegan to the Arctic Circle for 30 days and said, bring all your vegan food and let's go hike around, I'm going to kill a caribou. And if you feel up to it, you can also kill a caribou. And even if you don't want to, maybe you'll eat some of my caribou back at camp. I'd be shocked if you didn't sway these people. I'll give you a for instance, and it has changed recently, but in Minneapolis, there's a because we have wolves in Minnesota. We have wolves in Wisconsin, a lot of them. Wisconsin has a wolf quota. I forget what it is. Let's just say it's 200 wolves a year. They reach that quota in like 5 days of hunting.
Really?
Yeah, they open the hunting, and then within a few days, it's closed, and they've reached their quota.
Super successful.
Yeah, just boom, done. And I think they run them with dogs, and they do all this stuff.
Okay.
But in downtown Minneapolis, I would drive past this billboard all the time, and I've talked about this before, and it has changed now. But they had a close wolf hunting billboard in downtown Minneapolis with a photo of a coyote on it. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. The wolf people bought a billboard. The wolf people bought a billboard and put a picture of a coyote on it because they don't know the difference between a wolf and a coyote.
Wow.
And so, or whoever approved that image to go up there, you know, when you do a billboard, you know, several people are going to have to look at this image and look at it on a computer.
You would think there's an approval process, especially
exactly.
if you're lobbying something
for wolves. So that's my point, is that they're so blinded by, you know, it's a yes no matter what. I don't care what, you know. And I recently heard Forrest Galante, who's a biologist that I admire deeply, talking about how they're going to bring back woolly mammoths.
Yes.
And they're and he's like, this is amazing, this is awesome, this is incredible. Yes. And I'm also on that side, but I'm also thinking, you know, holy cow. Like, what does that mean evolutionary wise? Like, I hate to quote Jurassic Park, but those animals had their chance and they were selected out. That's like almost saying, hey, in our tribe of people,
it's
Bill
like, where
over
does
here,
it stop, right? Like,
yeah,
what
and
are
it's
you
all
bring
for
back next? A saber-toothed tiger?
And it's all for humans, right?
Right.
It's all for humans, I think, because I don't know.
I don't know. The consensus after doing, you know, I think we
how did your
8
interviews go?
Hours. They went amazing.
For what? Where were people's minds? Where did they go?
What our consensus and the message that I wanted to convey at the end of that, and it was education mainly for myself. This podcast has been solely out of greed. Any question I've asked you tonight is solely because I want to know about it. It's not like I have a panel of questions or I have audience members calling in or anything like that, right? Like, this is my own greed.
Right.
So with the wolf thing, being a bow hunter, I was new at starting the podcast. I think these were early episodes, like 12, 13, 14 or whatever. I was trying to be fair and honest because I am politically as well. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm very right-leaning and align more with that than I do maybe the left. Mm-hmm. And not to even go down politics, I've tried to be biased in that and not bring that up here on the podcast. Mm-hmm. I have certain things that I've talked about. I felt like biologically, though, there shouldn't be anything biologically at the ballot box.
No.
I don't. And that was my message was, and what I personally took from it, like, why we pay experts to be biologists for the state of Colorado. Mm-hmm. Why are we not listening to these people? Mm-hmm. Why are we forming opinions, or why are we allowed to go check a box, yes or no, that could determine the fate of so many people, you know? And the
animals themselves. What about the wolves? The wolves are going to be under tremendous pressure.
That was our second point, and it was crazy. A senator brought this up. He's like, is it fair to the wolf?
Yeah.
You're taking them out of a habitat. I'm assuming that they're coming from BC or someplace.
Or
and that's the other thing.
Perhaps,
Nobody's shared where they're getting these wolves from. Are they coming from a zoo?
Yeah.
Or no, these are going to be wild wolves. So they're going to have to be pulled from some place where they have no human interaction and dropped into a state where there's 7 million people and several major highways and wildlife fences and domesticated elk. And, you know, it's going to be,
wildlife fences.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Right. But we voted yes, so they're here. So I'm going to embrace it as much as I can. I just hope that we're doing it the right way. And I think, you know, we've already seen it happen here with spring bear hunting. You used to be able to bait and spring bear and run dogs on bears. Now, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, that was another thing, just to put it in perspective, that went to the ballot box, was voted yes to stop spring bear hunting. And now Colorado Parks and Wildlife will literally almost give you a bear tag for any game unit anywhere because
please kill
we
bears.
are overpopulated.
Yeah.
And it's already hurting the ungulates. So I just worry that we're already on this drastic decline that way.
Yeah, and those are calf killers, man. Bears.
And
they
bears
do so
are not
well
easy to hunt, you know, like without dogs or bait. And then if you're hunting them in the fall here, if we get a big snow, you might have 2 weeks out of that month to actually hunt them before they start their hibernation process.
And even once you get a hard frost, those guys sleep all day. As soon as they get a hard frost, those dudes want to sleep all day and eat all night.
Damn it, Donnie. I thought you were going to tell me something rosy about the wolves, man.
No, I mean, wolves are amazing, you know, but it's...
they're an amazing animal. I agree with that.
For instance, I went to a place, I drew a moose tag in Alaska, and I should have done my homework. But I was hunting moose. One of the better moose hunts I've ever been on in my life. It is probably the best moose hunt I've ever been on in my life. I didn't kill a bull, but I could have killed several giant hammer, old, massive bulls, but one thing would happen, and then it just was kind of a pitfall of errors. And a couple of them were wolves. A couple of times I'd stalk in on a giant bull, and I'd run into, like, some of the footage you saw in Who We Are. That's me running into a pack of wolves as I'm assuming we're stalking the same moose, or at least they're going out for their evening hunt, and I'm bumping right into them. And, and they're looking at me. I think they were looking at me. Either they were looking at me as food for a split second. They're kind of like, oh, what's this right here? Or they were looking at me like, whoa, we haven't seen a person down here. I would think if they saw a lot of people that they would have dashed as soon as they saw me. But when they saw me, they came in and circled me. And then they left. And they left very casually. And I ran into them 10 minutes later.
So you think it was more of a curiosity thing than it was?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're looking at me as a food product. And, but, I think they probably if you have to find your food, you kind of raise an eye like, well, there's something that is made out of meat. I don't know what it is yet, but, and they kind of give it a little, lift their heads up. But I didn't feel in danger at all. Even when they were walking behind me, I didn't feel any danger at all. And I had a wolf tag in my pocket. And I didn't, one of the photographers that was with me, he said, hey, are you going to kill one? There's a couple of really handsome ones right there, white ones, and there's a black one and several big gray ones. And I said, no, I don't know what's going on here with the wolves. I said, I have no idea what's going on right here with wolves. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. I didn't educate myself on it. I educated myself on the moose and the caribou, but not the wolves. And then, but I had a wolf tag, and I don't know why I did, but I just did. And then when the pilot was picking me up, I said, hey, we saw a lot of wolves. And he's like, hey, did you kill any? And I said, no. I said, I didn't know what was going on with the wolves here. And he's like, oh man, yeah. He's like, they're pretty, they're doing really well here. He's like, we could stand to lose a couple of wolves here in this valley. And I was like, oh, if I would have known that going in, I probably would have arrowed one or two of those wolves. Mm-hmm. But I didn't. And so I didn't, because I wasn't going to jump the gun, if you will. But yeah, I have a lot of admiration for wolves. I've seen them a lot. I've been around them a lot. But yeah, I think they get voted in for the wrong reasons, right? I think people, like Yellowstone was probably a great place to put them, right? This big, huge, wild area, and people coming to see wildlife, and rangers that are kind of keeping people away from the wildlife for the most part, other than...
Yeah, and there's no hunting that's taking place, so it kind of makes sense to have another apex predator in there.
And they're going to make a mistake here in Colorado, I think, if they don't allow hunting for the wolves.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. If there's not going to be a wolf season, they're going to be...
Well, I mean, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has said it blatantly on this podcast. If you can't manage predators, then
you're not managing.
We cannot be successful.
Yeah, it's one side of a seesaw.
Yeah.
Like if you have a kid sitting on one side and there's no other kid, then what are we talking about here? Because you can't just let this stuff... People think these things will tend into Shangri-La. They'll tend into balance, but there's imbalance all the time. There's a lot of fury in nature, and there's a lot of ebbs and flows, and there's population booms and busts, and there's starvation, there's massive storms, there's thin ice years where animals are trying to cross lakes and fall through. There's all sorts of things that... And
humans are a part of that as well.
Absolutely.
I believe, right? And we have been for thousands of years.
We've been there since the first day. We've been there since human beings have existed.
Going right back to what you say all the time. I love that, man. Donnie, we're coming up on 2 hours. This has been awesome, man. I would love to have you back anytime. I'm a big fan, proponent of you, the way that you portray hunting. So yeah, if we can ever do anything to help you out, please hit me up. If you guys ever need a spot while you're here to record a voiceover, or you just want to come hang out, we don't even have to record a podcast. So
I appreciate
you're
it,
always
man.
welcome, and I really appreciate your time. Just real quick before we jump off, what's new? What's coming out? You got any films coming out in the next year? Or
yeah, we do
working
actually.
on anything?
Yeah, we have two sides of our business. We have a commercial side and we have film side. We've been focusing a lot on the commercial side because we have enough clients that is keeping us busy. But we are, as a company, we are going to start diversifying our energies to doing both. And so we want to come out with a short film series of stuff that's going to live. Like we're going to be launching on YouTube, and we're going to go back to some of our original stuff. Like I just watched the very first thing we ever filmed. I just rewatched it. It's a 40-minute archery sheep hunt in Alaska. Nobody's ever seen anything from it other than a couple of photos, but we filmed and edited the whole thing. We just never released it. So we're going to go back and we're going to sit down at a table like this, and the guys are going to film me kind of retelling some of these old stories that we used to do that we have filmed, and then we're going to interject essentially footage into them and kind of tell some of these stories coming up and start doing some commercial work, or start doing some of our film work along with our commercial clients. And so our body of work is going to grow.
And then it's DonnieVincent.com, right?
Yep, DonnieVincent.com.
Okay.
And then, Instagram and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And definitely check out the YouTube channel. There's a ton of free stuff on there.
Yes.
And I urge people to go out and purchase. I purchase every one of your films
that
are available.
I appreciate that.
And that's how good they are, man. They are definitely movie quality. Like I would love to see them on the biggest screen possible.
Oh, they're
just
awesome.
Like, and I know I'm
film.
stealing that from Jack right now, but he really like put it in perspective. Jack Carr on Danger Close. Go and listen to that podcast. Love Jack. Love what he's doing. Love what you're doing, Donnie. And,
appreciate it.
I really appreciate your time and coming up, and you're welcome back anytime. So.
Very gracious of you to have me on. Very gracious.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.